I think that song still speaks to what people today are going through.
I had like a lot of hardship where I felt like I was dismissed on a lot of things.
As you go through the door, you want to leave it open for the next person.
This is a WDBJ7 special presentation. Black History Month, Voices of Virginia. Sponsored by Roanoke Valley Community Credit Union.
Thank you for joining us for our WDBJ7's Black History Month Voices of Virginia special. I'm Tanisha Jackson.
And I'm Michaela Shelton. Tonight we are traveling through history. Stories will be told from those who lived through the civil rights movement and faced racial discrimination.
We'll also learn from others who strive to keep this history alive by educating the next generation. And we begin in Lynchburg, one of the biggest sites for trading and auctioning enslaved people in the state. I dive into the lives of the enslaved and how the success of the Hill City was built on their backs. The first documented enslaved people were brought to Central Virginia and Campbell County by European American settlers in the late 1730s.
And then the settlement that developed around Lynch's Ferry, which became the city of Lynchburg, that had people of color, both free and enslaved, by 1780s, 1790s. And then that population continued to grow all the way through the rest of the 19th century.
The enslaved would get their first look at a new life here in Lynchburg as they were brought by rail and boat here on the James River and Canal. 40 to 50% of Lynchburg's population was enslaved, making it the largest slave market west of Richmond.
It was also, per capita, it had the most enslaved people of any large city in Virginia before the Civil War. And it's really because of its connection by river to Richmond. Richmond was the largest slave market in the Upper South.
Open any newspaper and you'd find ads to buy or auction off slaves to white individuals. Slaves could go for an upward of $2,500.
For a lot of people, it was too expensive to own enslaved people, but you could rent them.
Right in the middle of 9th Street is where the city's market house stood. It was also the place where all court-ordered sales of enslaved people took place, right at the heart of downtown Lynchburg.
Life was rough. They didn't always have enough food. They certainly didn't get the clothing that they needed. They didn't get any medical care. And not knowing if they were going to be punished, if they were going to be whipped. And they were always under a system of not knowing where they might be the next day.
And so families were separated during this slave trade.
Absolutely. You know, at the end of the day, the mom might be sold, and then, you know, where do they go? Who's going to take care of them?
By 1860, the city of Lynchburg was home to one of the largest concentrations of enslaved factory workers in Virginia, bringing great wealth to the Hill City.
Lynchburg is different maybe than the stereotype of slavery in that this is not a place where agricultural slavery happened within the town or the city. Most people who were enslaved here worked in industrial settings, mostly tobacco factories.
After emancipation, many slaves went on to become successful, such as Martha Spence Etley and Samuel Kelso. Their graves are among many located in the historic Old City Cemetery.
This was the only option for African American burials up until the mid-1800s. We know that approximately 13,000 people of color are buried here within the walls of Old City Cemetery. Now, who was free and who was enslaved, we don't exactly know.
Today, the Silent Witnesses Project in Lynchburg shines a light on the dark history of the enslaved people, documenting their stories and the sites where it all began. In Lynchburg, Tanisha Jackson, WDBJ7.
The original song was a gospel song written by Reverend Charles Tinley of Philadelphia in 1901, and it became a song of pride and endearment that many of the civil rights workers and activists such as Dr. Martin Luther King would sing during protests and marches, kind of just to give them the extra courage to keep on moving on.
Black and white together.
I think that song still speaks to what people today are going through, especially the African American community and communities of color. That song really still resonates with those same communities.
An important figure in the civil rights movement of Virginia and the nation is Barbara Johns.
As a 16-year-old, she led a student walkout that sparked a lawsuit and a landmark ruling outlawing segregation in public schools. Joe DeShiel has her story.
Barbara Johns died more than 30 years ago, but her life and legacy are front and center at the Robert Russa Moton Museum in Farmville.
And I think Barbara Johns was just built a little bit different, right?
Recently, museum director Kanan Townsend gave us a tour of the former school building, described as the birthplace of the student-led civil rights revolution. This is the room where Barbara Johns and more than 450 fellow students gathered on the morning of April 23, 1951. After creating a diversion that lured the principal out of the building, she stood on this stage and urged her classmates to walk out in protest, and they did. The two-week walkout would lead to a lawsuit that became part of the landmark case Brown versus Board of Education. And when the Moton Museum was dedicated on the 50th anniversary of the walkout in 2001, former students recreated their protest against substandard conditions.
I always was a follower. I thank God for that, and I thank God that I did follow her that day.
Since then, Johns has taken her place in Capitol Square, featured in the Civil Rights Monument, unveiled there in 2008.
She would be proud of what happened and what happened since.
The state renamed an office building in her honor in 2017.
She never minced her words, so you knew where she stood on any subject at any time.
And in December of last year, a statue of Barbara Johns replaced Robert E. Lee in the U.S. Capitol.
She put God first in her life. She was brave, bold, determined.
Johns had to leave Prince Edward County because of threats. She attended college, settled in Philadelphia, and became a school librarian. She died in 1991. But as we approach the 75th anniversary of the student walkout this spring, her impact in Prince Edward County and the nation is undeniable.
You're talking 4 years before Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott. Martin Luther King Jr. in April of 1951 was still in college, and Barbara led these students on what would eventually be ground zero for our student-led civil rights movement.
And that, Townsend says, is a story he hopes more Virginians will explore and embrace. In Farmville, Joe DeShiel, WDBJ7.
Coming up, we'll be joined by members of sororities and fraternities to learn more about the role the Divine Nine played in Black history.
And still ahead, the first African-American reporter for a major news outlet in Danville is still telling stories today. The message she has for the next generation.
Well, a significant part of Black history are the sororities and fraternities founded between 1906 and 1963. They were the embodiment of brotherhood, sisterhood, and community service amid racial discrimination. We're talking about the Divine Nine. With me now is Daniel Burks, president of Roanoke Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, and Emmanuel Arnold with Kappa Alpha Psi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Now, y'all are representing two of the 9 chapters that make up the Divine Nine. And so talk about what was the purpose in the beginning for y'all's founders to create these sororities and fraternities?
Well, I think for Delta Sigma Theta, our founders wanted to create a sisterhood that focused on providing, assistance to those in need, and also social justice.
From our fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi, we weren't founded at a historically Black college or university. We were founded at Indiana University. It was the norm to not be allowed in certain spaces for students of color, and so one of the founding principles of our organization was to be able to have a place to exist, a place to be supportive, collective uplift, and just help develop men into leaders. A lot of cases, there's opportunities to learn about an organization through your friends, through your family members, so oftentimes that brings people, piques their interest as well.
You see that generation continue the legacy of joining these organizations. Kind of a cool part are the stepping and the strolling. A lot of people see that and they are just in awe of the entertainment value and the cultural value of that. Talk about how did that become even a part of Black sororities and fraternities?
Absolutely. Well, from my perspective, especially with Kappa Alpha Psi, one thing that's significant and kind of unique to our organization are stepping with canes. And it, as a lot of things form, is informal, and then popularity grew within the organization, and then, in the 1980s, it became an official part of our organization. And so, but in general, stepping, strolling, even chants and things like that are ways to pay homage to our organizations, ways to show unity and pride, and it's become a big part of our culture now.
And many of these organizations started at HBCUs, but how have y'all seen that kind of shift to also spreading into other universities and colleges that aren't HBCUs?
Well, Delta Sigma Theta sorority, of course, was founded on an HBCU, but early in our history, we actually did expand to non-HBCUs, the predominantly white institutions. So we historically have had chapters at other colleges and universities, as well as, well, now we have chapters throughout the world.
As Black students expanded beyond historically Black colleges and universities, there was still a need for these spaces to exist and kind of cultural anchors on campus where like-minded individuals and people of color felt they were in a space where they could grow together and support each other. So I think naturally, as people spread out to different campuses and universities, there was still a need for our organizations and chapters.
All of these organizations are still going so strong all these years later. What are y'all doing now in today's times to continue that legacy of community service in our community?
Most recently, the Roanoke Alumni Chapter has held our Human Trafficking Awareness Forum. We did that a couple of weeks ago, and we actually have a Women's Holistic Health Forum that's coming up.
Our biggest focus is Guide Right, which is our youth development program. And so we're always looking for opportunities to partner with local elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, for their existing programs, whether it's volunteering.
And I'm sure our community appreciates everything that y'all do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. And we'll be right back with our WDBJ7 Black History Month special.
A Danville woman is still preserving history since becoming the first African-American reporter for the Register and Bee newspaper in the 70s. I sat down with Andrea Burney to talk about the challenges she faced and the message she has for those facing similar situations today. As Andrea Burney enters the historic Danville Register and Bee building for the first time since it became the Bee Hotel in 2020, she's reminded of her time working there as a reporter in the 70s.
It just brought back a lot of memories because I spent so many years here.
After graduating from George Washington High School in 1971, Burney attended Boston University to study journalism, a path that was written in the stars.
My mother taught first grade, and my father taught 12th grade English, and he was also a part-time journalist. So I had it in my bones that I needed to go into something that included creative writing.
During her junior year, she received recognition from the American Newspaper Publishers Association, an effort by the company to diversify newsrooms. Several big newspapers from across the country gave her job offers, including the Register and Bee. She considered moving to a big city, but it was her dad who encouraged her to return to her hometown.
My father said, no, you really need to come back home so that you can show people that there are Black people who can write, who can tell stories. So I took his advice, but my professor at college, he just thought I was crazy.
Burney started at the Register and Bee in June of 1975 when the Register and the Bee were two separate papers. It was on her first day during a conversation with the custodian in the elevator that she realized she would be the company's first Black reporter.
And I said to him, how many other African Americans are here in this building? And he gave me the funniest look, and he said, just you and me. And I was just, floored because I'm coming from a big city like Boston and used to seeing all types of people. And even though I grew up in this community, it still was kind of a shock.
During her time there, she covered many topics from crime to education and built strong relationships with fellow reporters her age. But with her older coworkers, it was a different story.
A lot of them had some concerns. We had one person who had a hard time pronouncing the word Negro. But it didn't bother me because I understood, which generation he was from. And I was just, having in my mind to be as professional and to do the best job I could and continue to tell the stories.
After working at the Register-and-Bee for 4 years, she moved away to pursue editorial and PR work. But when her father passed, she moved back home and took a job at Danville Community College. There, she worked to increase minority enrollment and encourage future generations to break barriers with grace.
Think about your professionalism, because as you go through the door, you want to leave it open for the next person. And you want that next person to have an even better experience than you did.
Today, Bernie is still telling stories through documentaries and word of mouth, preserving the history she already made. In Danville, Michaela Shelton, WDBJ7. Bernie recently helped produce a documentary called The Tale of Three Northside Danville Neighborhoods about the untold stories of the Black communities that helped shape the area.
Dip my fingers in ink, so every pen I hold writes black. Cover my throat in obsidian scarves, so every word I say echoes black. Paint my eyelids with coal, so all that I read blooms black. Pierce my ears with tourmaline, so the music I hear reverberates black. Bathe me in onyx, so every time I cry, I am baptized black. Soak the bottom of my soles in black tea, so everywhere I walk, I leave a trail of black. After this coat, add another, and another. Darker, darker.
During Black History Month, we not only look at the contributions Black Americans make, but also the hardships they face. One area of discrimination is in the medical field,
where despite making up roughly 13% of the U.S. population, Black doctors represent only about 5% of the workforce. This underrepresentation and disparity can cause emotional distress for patients.
Going through my own sickness and feeling what I felt as a patient, not being heard or seen, feeling like I was alone. I feel like I want to be the doctor that reaches that patient that feels that same way that I felt.
WDBJ7's Kyra Willis tells us about the impacts of discrimination in healthcare. You can see the full story on our extended special on WDBJ7+.
Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed our Black History Month special, Voices of Virginia.
And don't forget, you can watch the extended special on WDBJ7+. Have a good night.
Thank you for watching Black History Month, Voices of Virginia, sponsored by Roanoke Valley Community Credit Union.